You're listening to the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, a podcast of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. It's season 9 here at the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, and we're excited because 9 comes before 10, which comes before, well, you know what I mean. We're having a blast, still talking about all things science fiction, and this season is set to be our biggest and most epic season yet. We're having more fun than we've ever had, and we invite you to invite all of your friends and tune in each week to new episodes as we explore the cosmos of science fiction. We're getting ready to blast off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, listeners of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. This week on the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, we are thrilled to be joined by Marc Okrand, the linguist behind some of the most iconic languages in science fiction. If you've ever muttered a few words of Klingon or wondered how Vulcans might really speak, well, you're already familiar with Marc's work. He developed the Klingon and Vulcan languages for the Star Trek universe, and his groundbreaking work has brought an entirely new level of depth and realism to alien communication in science fiction. But Marc's influence goes far beyond the final frontier. He also played a key role in developing the first closed captioning system for television, revolutionizing media accessibility for the hearing impaired. Marc is not just a language creator, he's a storyteller who speaks through syllables, syntax, and sound. Get ready for a fascinating journey into constructed languages, behind-the-scenes Trek tales, and the evolution of alien speech. Marc, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We are so thrilled to have you here. I was so happy that through people I knew, we could make this connection and get you on the podcast.
Cool.
And well, we'd love to hear about your origin story. How did you get into just linguistics in general?
Well, linguistics, when I was in college, when I entered in college, I never heard of it as something to study. I knew about foreign languages and learning Spanish and things like that. But at my college, they gave an introductory course that all the freshmen had to take, which was called Language, Society, and Culture, or Language, Culture, and Society. I don't remember which way it went. Doesn't matter. And what it turned out to be was a couple of lectures each week a different professor. So one week it was a philosopher, one week a historian, one week a literature person, one week a psychologist. So, all with language as a theme. Okay, but different approaches. And the approach that kind of grabbed me was when the linguist talked. There was only one linguist on campus at the time, but when it was his turn, I said, this is great. What a great way to look at things. What a interesting way to approach puzzles, which is what linguistics is to a certain degree. So I took Linguistics 1, or it wasn't called that, and Linguistics 2, and then summer came. And when I came back from summer, the school was brand new, and in the summer, they redesigned the entire program already. So there was no such thing as Linguistics 3. They combined things together. So they set me up with the professor as in an independent study. So it was just me as a sophomore and the professor getting together 2-3 times a week and talking about all this stuff. And that's when I really got hooked. That was the origin.
Nice. Now, So you were in college, I think, around the time or shortly after the original Star Trek aired?
During.
Were you a fan?
I can't say I was a fan because at the time, living in the dorms, nobody or hardly anybody had a TV in the dorms. Okay. So I'd see Star Trek every once in a while if I was at someone's house downtown or something like that. So I was aware of it, but didn't watch it in any regular way. So I got wrapped up in it like everybody else, like most everybody else, when it started rerunning 5 nights a week and stuff like that, several years afterwards.
Okay. And so what led you so you were studying linguistics. How did you get hooked into Star Trek several years later?
That was because of closed captioning, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. When I started with the closed captioning, I started before we were on the air with closed captions. Okay, so I was there. I have no responsibility for the technology, but in terms of procedures and systems and stuff like that, that's what I was involved with. And at the beginning, we could not do anything live. We could only do shows that were on film or on videotape, or we could get it ahead of time. And we finally developed the technology to do something live, like news and sports, where you could not get it ahead of time because it was live, right?
Mhm.
And the first show we did that we announced to the world, I mean, we did it on the air but didn't tell anybody. But the first show we did that we announced to the world, we wanted to have it be one with high publicity value and relatively low possibility of error in case it wasn't as good as we thought it was. So we picked the Oscars. This is in 1982.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And the
I remember
publicity,
where I was in 1982.
the publicity value is obvious,
Mhm.
right? And they, in fact, announced on the Oscars, closed caption for the first time, da 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 da. And the low probability of error is, no secrets here. The Oscars are scripted, right?
Mhm.
So when they get out there and say the job of the cinematographer is to make the actor, all that stuff is scripted.
Mhm.
The show is legit. So when they say and the Oscar goes to, that is a genuine surprise.
Okay.
Up to that point, it's scripted. So we could get the script ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And put it basically into a computer system. And then when the people were talking, we would send the lines out as they were saying them, basically like a teleprompter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So therefore, so the other part that we'd have to do really, really live, we hoped, was the acceptance speeches, right? I'd like to thank my mother and father and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the thinking was that if that part didn't go as well as we'd hoped, at least the whole rest of the show would be good because that was all in the can. So the Academy or ABC or the production company or somebody said, this is a great idea. We'll give you the script ahead of time, a week ahead of time. But it keeps changing. Every day there's changes. So somebody has to keep track so that you incorporate the changes as it's going along. So they flew me out to Hollywood. I was in charge. I got to be in charge of this little project. Flew me out to Hollywood. I arrived. I called up whoever I was supposed to call. I guess the Academy. I don't remember who I called. And this is a Monday morning, I remember. And they said, welcome to LA. We'll have something for you Wednesday night or Thursday. So I had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with nothing to do, which was fine with me, So I grew up in Los Angeles. So I had family and friends there, but I hadn't called any of my friends ahead of time because I didn't want to call them and say, hi, I'm in town and I have no time to see you, right? But all of a sudden I did
Now
have
you
time.
do.
Yeah. So I called a few friends, and one friend said, where are you? Where are you calling me from? So I said where I was. She said, oh, that's like a mile from here. Why don't you come by for lunch? Okay. So I went to where she worked for lunch. She worked at Paramount Pictures.
Oh.
Her boss was Harv Bennett,
Oh, my goodness.
executive producer of then Star Trek II is what they were working on.
Uh-huh.
At that point, filming was done. They were in post-production. I knew him from a long time ago, too, but I didn't call him. I called her. And so she and I and another woman working on the film went out to lunch in the Paramount commissary, and we're just sitting there talking. And somehow the fact that I had a degree in linguistics came up. And the other woman said, oh, that's interesting because we've been talking to people at UCLA linguistics department. And I said, why? Well, there's a scene in Star Trek II. I guess they were less fussy about letting secrets out of the bag in those days than they are now. There's a scene in Star Trek II where Mr. Spock and a new character, a female Vulcan, have a little conversation. And when we filmed it, they were speaking in English because the script said to say this stuff in English. But now that we're in editing, everyone thinks for a number of different reasons that they should be talking Vulcan to each other. So we got the idea of hiring a linguist from UCLA to come over and look at the scene, look at their lips, make up gibberish that when spoken would match the lip movements, but not sound like English.
Oh, my
And then we
goodness.
would put subtitles. And I said, that's really smart. And that's very clever. And hiring a linguist makes sense because they know what you do with your mouth to make certain noises and all that kind of stuff. And she said, yeah, we thought it was a good idea too, but it's turned into a headache. And now this was 1982. This was 40 something years ago. I don't remember what the headache was. Except it was a boring headache. And what I mean by that is they were playing, this is pre-email and pre-internet and all that stuff.
Right.
So either they were playing phone tag, couldn't get their schedules to mesh. I don't know what the problem was.
Handwritten notes.
Yeah. And she said, I really don't know what we're going to do because we have to have this taken care of right away. And I said, what do you mean right away? It's got to be done by the end of this week, which is exactly how long I was in town for the Oscars. So I said, I can do that. You know,
Mhm.
I didn't think that I would do that, but as they were telling me about it, I was thinking how I would do it if I were to do it. And my friend said, yeah, he can do that. He's got the same kind of degrees as those people at UCLA do. And at that point, the associate producer happened to walk by and they turned to him and said, we just solved the Vulcan problem. And he, what are you talking about? So they told me, he said, come see me after lunch.
Mhm.
So that's how it happened. Now, the fact that I knew Harv is not irrelevant to the story because it was ultimately his decision to hire me, even though he wasn't part of this whole lunch conversation thing.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's not like he was hiring someone who just showed up off the street or something like that.
Sure.
But I didn't. What I've said in other contexts, I didn't go there to get a job. I went there to get a
Right.
sandwich.
Right.
But so I ended up doing this little thing. The little scene is in Star Trek II,
Mhm.
where Kirk comes aboard the Enterprise and Spock is going to show him all around. This is Admiral Kirk at this time, right? Spock is going to show him all around, and Kirk goes away, and Saavik, who's this Vulcan character, says to Spock, he's never what I expect. And Spock says, "Well, what do you expect?" or something like that.
Mhm.
She says, "Well, he's so human." And Spock says, "Nobody's perfect," right? That short little scene. So
Mhm.
that's the one where
Yeah.
they spoke English, but I had to look at their lips and come up with Vulcan gobbledygook.
So,
Nice.
so if I can ask a question, because this is an just a really neat piece of Star Trek trivia and information that us Star Trek fans geek out on. So you're saying, sir, that they are actually speaking English and you had to go and make it come up with something else
Right.
that they then later overdubbed
That
over
they
top
that,
of
that
what
they
they
dubbed in. Right. Yeah. So
wow.
yes. And
Amazing.
actually, this was exactly the technique they did in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That wasn't
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
But in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, that near the very beginning, well, the very beginning is the Klingons, but after that is Spock is undergoing this ritual thing where he's being inducted. I don't know what the right word is into
Mhm.
Kolinar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
And there's a woman conducting the ceremony, and she's got a helper there, and the entire scene when you watch it is in Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Same deal. When they filmed that scene, everybody was speaking English.
I'll be darned.
Mhm.
I've
And then
never heard that.
after the fact, they said, "Why are they speaking English? This is a Vulcan ceremony on the Vulcan planet. Nobody is there except Vulcans. Okay, they
Wow.
should be speaking Vulcan." Now, there's a couple other things. So that's from the point of view of the story. From the point of view of movie making, there was a couple other reasons they did it. One was that in that movie, they knew there was going to be Klingon language.
Mm.
Mhm.
That was part of the original plan, but having Vulcan language in there was an afterthought. But they said,
Mhm.
hey, if they're speaking Klingon, if the Klingons are speaking Klingon, why aren't the Vulcans speaking Vulcan? And the other thing it let them do was change the performance. They really weren't pleased for whatever reason with the way it
Mm.
sounded in English.
Mhm.
Okay, so they got to do it all over again. So the voice you hear of this priestess or whatever she is not the voice of the actor. It's a different voice.
Mhm.
My understand the and the, her helper has, I think, one line.
Mm-hmm.
Spock has zero lines.
Mhm.
The helper has one line, and my understanding, although I can't absolutely confirm this, but my understanding is that the voice of that again was not the actor's voice, but it was
I'll
the
be
voice of
darned.
the guy who made up the gobbledygook.
Oh.
Okay.
Same
Interesting.
lip syncing thing. Okay.
So when you did this for Star Trek 2, how much so you're trying to match their lips and so the way they would move, but now how much at that point grammar or creating a language are you doing? Are you
None.
just okay?
None.
Mm.
None. It was entirely sound, just sound.
Mhm.
Uh, we did pay there. There was Vulcan prior to this. I mean, there was the Vulcan in the motion pictures, and there was
Mhm.
Vulcan on TV.
Mhm.
The original episodes. On the
The
original
mock time
episodes,
had a
there's
little.
maybe a dozen words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's no sentences except for one-word sentence, which is Kroika, right?
Hmm.
Which means stop, cut it out.
Mhm.
Other than that, it's just name Faltor Pond and all
Mhm.
these things and the Lirpan, but just words. But there's sentences they go on and on and on in the motion picture in this Kolinar thing.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because they showed me the scene from Star Trek 2, and then I went home and figured out what to do, right? Sat in front of the mirror and all this stuff. Went back in the next morning because I was supposed to coach Kirstie Alley, who played
Mm-hmm.
Savik.
Mhm.
And before going over to the soundstage, the associate producer says to me, he says, in Star Trek the Motion Picture, they speak Vulcan. I said, yeah. He says, your language should sound like that. And I'm thinking, why are we thinking about this now? Why didn't we think about this before?
You spent time
I did
developing
all
the
this
words.
stuff.
Yes.
He says, so let's go watch that.
Mhm.
So, okay, so we went and we watched it. And I'm listening. Are there any sounds in that Vulcan that I can sprinkle into what I've done that won't louse up the lip movements? And there were. From time to time, someone said kind of sound.
Hmm.
You can't see that on your lips. So I said, let's put in a few in there. So I put them in. And then we went to the soundstage, and I'm working with Kirstie Alley, right? This is like her first big job in Hollywood.
Mhm.
And we're practicing the lines. And the director was Nick Meyer, right? Nicholas Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hear him on the other side of the room saying to the associate producer, I don't know if this language is going to work. And then the producer says, why? What's wrong with it? And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's the matter here? And Nick says, well, I don't think Vulcan should sound like Yiddish. And what he was hearing was all that I just stuck in there. And the producer said, well, let's try it. Let's just try it. And if we don't like it, we'll do something else. And Nick said, okay. So we tried it. And Nick said, okay, good. This works. This is fine.
Nice.
See, actually, it's appropriate for it to sound like Yiddish, given that the Vulcan salute also,
Right.
Nimoy
Yeah.
talks
Okay.
about the story of how he had peeked at the rabbi when he wasn't supposed to peek, and he saw them basically doing
Exactly.
what it looks like a
Exactly.
double
Yeah.
hand Vulcan
Yeah.
salute.
Well,
So that works for me.
It's interesting you just brought that up, Mark, because again, there was an episode of Frasier called Star Mitzvah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And in it, Frasier's friend Noel is going to teach him how to do speak to his son in Hebrew. And he gets on stage and he starts doing it. And everybody in the audience listening. And the rabbi goes, what the heck was that?
Yeah.
And the kid stands up, it's Klingon.
Klingon. Yeah. You know the kid's name, right?
Which one? The
The
son?
kid who's not the son, but the kid who stood up and said, that's Klingon.
I forget who that
The
was.
character name. The character name is Berman.
Berman, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
named
clever.
after one of the creators of the show. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's funny because yes, what you just said is that there's so similarities between the way that you enunciate Hebrew. I'm Jewish, so I had to go through a bar mitzvah and had to do the whole haftorah and the whole bit and, learn how to say everything with the cha and the whole thing. So yeah, the fact that Nicholas Meyer said, that sounds like Yiddish. Well, yeah. And the question is,
Kelsey Grammer clearly didn't have to go through all that.
but the question I had was what they used for Klingon did match the English that Berman tells Frederick.
Yes. Yes.
Because I watched it on closed caption and you could see the words.
Yeah, close.
Close.
Because I did that. I made up the lines for.
Oh, you did? Because I went to look on this. I went to look at the end of the episode just today to look for and there's no credit for you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to say that, but
But
no.
but you did work on that, even though you're uncredited.
Yeah.
Okay.
They sent me the speech that Frasier is going to say, right? And I translated that into Klingon and wrote it out. I think 3 different ways phonetically.
Right.
Would normally write Klingon, the same thing, but with hyphens between the syllables because that's easier to read. And then I wrote it out in a way that if you think it's English, you'll get close.
Right.
Okay, so it's the
More
syllable.
phonetically, I guess you're
So yeah,
saying.
sort of phonetically, but
Yeah.
so BOO would be pronounced boo,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. Um, and I offered to coach, but no one took me up on that. Anyway, so I
Okay.
didn't know how it was going to work until I saw it on TV. And when I saw it on TV, I noticed two things. One is they chose the English-like version to use, but he read it as if it were Spanish. So instead of saying BOO boo, he'd say bo or something like that.
Oh, okay.
It was
Oh, okay.
very, but again, he's not a good speaker of Klingon, so it fit the
could be a
story.
Yeah,
It was
dialect.
fine.
yeah,
It was
because
fine.
he was reading from a card that his
Right.
Noel
That
had
Noel
given
wrote
to him,
out.
and so it's
Right.
like,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, there's the way I did it, or the way it was presented to me, there's 4 lines to this little speech.
Hmm.
Okay. But when Fraser read the thing, he only read 3 of them.
Oh, really?
Okay.
And I'm thinking, what happened? And then when Berman translates it at the end, he translates all 4. And I'm thinking, wow, this Berman is brilliant.
Interesting.
He translated a line that Fraser didn't even say. Right? But I'm thinking, what happened to the 3rd line? Right? Did I not send it to them? So I went through all my notes. No, I sent it to them. And I finally figured out what happened, or at least I think I know what happened, which is line 2 and line 3 happened to start with the same word.
Okay.
And whoever transcribed this into the script must have, when they got to do that, when they got to
Oh,
line 3, they said,
Okay.
oh, I did that already, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
went on to the next. That's my theory. I don't know if it's true.
And I'll just add, for our fans who are listening, it was season 10, episode 6. So if you want to go back and watch it yourself, it's actually a very funny episode.
very
all
good
in all.
episode. It is.
Very, very well done.
It
Yeah.
is. So, okay, so that was the Vulcan origin story.
Yeah.
Now, what about Klingon? So Klingon, though, developed differently.
Klingon was very different. Yeah. So when I finished the Vulcan, right? So I worked with Chris on Tuesday or whatever day it was. And then Friday of that week, I worked with Leonard Nimoy, right?
Mhm.
And dubbed in his line. And at that point, there was Oscar stuff to do.
Oh,
So
okay.
I didn't hang around or anything. So he did his line, 2 lines. And I left, and I'm driving from Paramount to where the Oscars were, thinking, I just taught Mr. Spock how to speak Vulcan, which is weird.
Yeah.
And honestly thought
Awesome.
that was as cool as could be, and that's the end of it. I did this. This was fun. This was fun from the point of view of a Star Trek fan. This is fun from the point of view as a linguist. This is great. And now that's the end of that. On with real life. But a year and a half later, I got a call from Harv Bennett, and he said, "Well, we're making another movie, and the villains are going to be the Klingons. I think," meaning Harv thinks, "that they should have their own language. You did Vulcan. You want to do Klingon?" So that's how that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But that was a very different thing, because for Klingon, it was really making up a language. It was not just the sounds. So I got the script ahead of time, went through, figured out what they had to say, figured out what the sounds should be, all this kind of stuff. Had some conversations with Harv about all of this to get ideas of what they had in mind and so on.
Yeah.
Started what is now called conlanging, or language construction. That word conlanging wasn't invented yet when I was doing all this, but that's what I was doing. And made up what was needed for the film based on the lines. And the script said, when someone speaks Klingon, made up those lines, made up Klingon versions of all the lines where Klingons were speaking English to each other, not when they were speaking to Captain Kirk, but when they were speaking to each other, just in case someone would say during the filming, "Why are these Klingons talking English to each other? Why don't they talk Klingon?" I could say, "Okay, say this," and hand it to them, rather than saying, "Oh, let me go think about that and I'll tell you tomorrow," or something like that. They used 0 of those lines. Okay. But it helped flesh out the language and fill out the grammar and stuff like that. So it was good. Yeah.
Nice.
I watched your YouTube video from 2003 where you explained how you came up with the Klingon language, and how you stated in that there were times where the actors like flubbed a line and you thought, well,
Yeah.
that sounded pretty good. You know what? I'll make a change to
Yeah,
that.
when we did it, because I was there during the filming of almost every Klingon line. There's a couple of lines where I wasn't there, but most of the time I was there. I'm just out the frame, just outside the
Mhm.
frame when I'm speaking Klingon. Um, and at the beginning, early stages of all this, if the actor would say the line in Klingon, well, when you make a movie, you shoot a scene, the actor yells action, and they do their thing, and then the director, not the actor yells, the director yells action, blah 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 blah. They do their thing, the director yells cut, right? After the yells cut, they'll check with the camera guy to see was that okay, and the camera person will say yes or no. There was a shadow of the microphone or whatever. Check with the sound person. Was that okay? Yes. No. A truck went by, right?
Mm.
And when there was Klingon in it, they would check with me. Was that okay? And if it was, I'd say yes. And if it wasn't, I'd say no. And I learned very quickly not to say no very often.
Yeah.
That would annoy them because then they'd have to do it again, and time is money and all this stuff.
Mhm.
So if it sounded really, really bad, then they would know. They agreed when it sounded really, really bad. But if it sounded wrong, if the actor said something that I didn't intend for him to say, but it sounded like it could have been Klingon, I say, it's fine. And I'd make a note. So if the actor said toe when he was supposed to say to, from now on, the word is toe, right?
Mhm.
Huh.
So it started changing little by little when the actors
Wow.
would make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it could affect the grammar too. If depending on what the mistake was, sometimes you believe something. One of the versions of that I talked about is there's a scene uh, in the film where it's later on in the film where Krug is the Klingon heavy, right?
Mhm.
Krug has prisoners down on the Genesis planet. There's a couple of Klingon guards down there, and David and Savik and Spock, at whatever age he is at that point,
Mhm.
are down there. And Krug wants something from Kirk, and Krug says to him, "You better do what I'm telling you to do, or else I'm going to do something horrible. And just to prove how serious I am, I'm going to kill one of the prisoners." And then he says in Klingon to his henchman down there, "Kill one of them. I don't care which one." Right? And that's in Klingon. And the way you say that in Klingon, and at least the way I had it written out in Klingon, is "Ha yichoch vai tishachbe." Ha means one. It doesn't anymore because of some other reason, but at the time, ha meant one, and yichoch means kill. Ye is a little prefix that means it's an imperative. It's a command. Choch means kill. So one, kill. All right, and the other part.
Mhm.
So Christopher Lloyd, who played Krug, he and I practiced and practiced. Ha yichoch vai tishachbe. Ha yichoch vai tishachbe. Then we shot the scene. And Krug says to Kirk, just to prove how serious I am, I'm going to kill one of the prisoners. Yahoch, Jishachbe. Nimoy, who's the director, yells, "Cut, that was great." Christopher Lloyd says, "I blew it." And Nimoy says, "What are you talking about?" He says, I said the Klingon wrong, which is true. He left off the cha and he left out the vai in the second part. And Leonard says, "Mark, how did the Klingon sound to you?" So there was only one way I could answer that question. The Klingon sounded fine. Okay, now the problem is that what he said was Yahoch, which means kill. But the whole point of the scene is kill one, right?
Mm.
So I said, okay, how are we going to do this? Well, yeah, this little prefix means command. I said, it's still a prefix that means it's a command. But from now on, you can use it only with a singular object. So it has to mean kill one.
Okay.
You use a different prefix if you're killing more than one. So it's fine. Make a note. Right? So the grammar changed too. So things like that would happen throughout the filming.
And then so sometime after the filming, this book came out that I'm holding
Right.
in my hand. So folks can't see what I'm holding up, but it is the Klingon Dictionary. The copyright is 1985.
Yeah.
I bought this in had to have been 1988 or 89. I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure, but it couldn't have been any earlier, and I know it wasn't any later than that. But so this whole book got commissioned, and there's obviously a lot more in here than was on the
Yeah,
screen
yeah. When
at the
I
time.
was working on the film, um, people would come up to me from time to time, mostly the filmmaking crew people, and say, "Oh, you're the language guy." Yeah. And they'd say something in Klingon. I'd say, "What should I say?" They say, "Hi, how are you?" I'd say, "A Klingon would never say that." Ha ha ha. So anyway, but I realized that there was interest in the language.
Mhm.
Uh, and I got the idea, maybe there's this kind of person out there that I haven't had a whole lot of interaction with up until that time, called a Star Trek fan.
Gotta love us.
Maybe they would be interested.
They exist? I thought they were
Hello.
unicorns. What's going on here?
Yeah. So I proposed the idea actually to Harv Bennett of writing a book explaining how the language works. I said, would anyone be interested in that? He said, well, by chance, by coincidence, I'm going into a meeting this afternoon to discuss merchandising, the shirts and the mugs and all
Mhm.
this stuff. I'll mention it.
Hmm.
Then later that day, I saw him and he said to me, don't be surprised if you get a call from Pocketbooks, which is the publisher of Star Trek books at the
Nice.
time.
Yeah.
And I did, it's a while later. And the original plan for the book was it would come out when the movie came out, which was 1984, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that sounds.
But the book got delayed for bureaucratic reasons. It has nothing to do with Star Trek or the content of the book or anything, just bureaucracy, which turned out to be a very good thing because between the time I wrote the book and the time it came out, the movie went into post-production. And during post-production, they changed some things that affected the language.
Mm.
They changed some of the lines where the Klingons were speaking English. Now they had to speak Klingon.
Hmm.
Okay. Even though I'd prepared for that, they didn't take me up on it at the time, but now after the fact they did. But now we had to do this lip syncing business. So I had to make up Klingon words and grammar stuff that would match the English lip movements on the film. So some of the lines in Star Trek 3 are done like that. In one case, two cases, anyway, they changed the subtitle. So now the subtitle means something other than what the Klingon said. So I had to figure out grammatically how that works so it still all made sense. And I was able to incorporate all of that into the dictionary before it got published. If the book had come out when it was supposed to, it would not have matched the movie, which is ironic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
interesting.
good. That's good.
So the delay,
Yeah.
the delay was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was never good at languages in general, even though I took French, I took German for a long time. I've tried a lot of Italian, and I tried this. But one of my favorite things at the end of the book is an appendix of handy, useful Klingon expressions.
Right.
And I was
Right.
mentioning this right before we started recording. My favorite one is the very last one, which I'm glad for. You mentioned a few minutes ago the whole idea of doing the phonetic pronunciation, which again, I appreciate because I would never be able to do this otherwise. But nukdak yuch dapol.
That's very good. Nuktak uchtapo.
Yes. I mean, I've been practicing that one and that one only for 30 something years.
Right.
So, which is for our listeners is where do you keep the chocolate?
Right. Yeah.
Very,
that was
very important.
the editor of the book. That was her idea to put that in there.
Great.
It's probably something that she wanted to say.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
that
important.
phrase-
It's important.
Yeah, that phrase. I was at a Star Trek convention someplace after the dictionary came out, and was sitting at an autograph table with a number of the guests who were at the convention, and happened to be sitting next to George Takei at this particular.
Oh.
And if you've ever seen George Takei at a convention, he likes to talk to everybody. So going through the line took a long time because he would talk to everybody and so on. Anyway, at one point, a mother and her little kid came up and George signed something for the kid. And I was next. And the kid gave me whatever it was I'm supposed to sign. And the mother said to the kid, say it, go ahead, say it. And the kid very shyly said something in Klingon.
Oh, that's sweet.
And the mother said, was that right? Did he say it right? And I wasn't expecting that. So I said, Say it again. I mean, I wasn't expecting to hear Klingon.
Mhm.
Say it again. So he said something. I was like, ah. And then the mother said, that's supposed to mean, where do you keep the chocolate? And I said, oh, and as soon as she said that, I knew exactly what the kid was saying and what the mistakes were. And I said, oh,
Mhm.
you're supposed to say like this, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. And George, who's a big chocoholic, sitting next to me,
Mhm.
said, oh, teach me how to say that. And I said, okay, you say, and he said, no, not you. He pointed at the kid, you.
Aw.
So the
That's
kid
cool.
taught George how to say, where do you keep the chocolate in Klingon? Not quite right. Okay. But George learned it and said that to every next person who came through the line.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
wow.
great.
I love it. I love it. That is absolutely, and oftentimes when I'm in random conversations with people and the concept of the Klingon language comes up, that is the one I pull out
Yeah,
just to
and that
make it
came up
sound like I know what I'm
again.
doing.
Yeah, in Young Sheldon.
Oh, really?
In Young Sheldon, there
Cool.
was an episode where he speaks a little bit of Klingon,
I missed that episode. I didn't watch
and
100% of that
yeah,
show. I watched a
and
lot of it, but
yeah, and when he speaks, it's not all that relevant to the plot. He's just showing off that he can speak
Mhm.
Klingon, basically.
Yep.
And they sent me a line and wanted me to translate it. And the line, I'm not going to remember now what it was, but it was an internet meme that some line originally from Monty Python had been translated into lots and lots and lots of different languages on the internet.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know if the producers knew that, but I told them that's what it was. And I don't know that in 1970, whatever Young
Mhm.
Sheldon takes place, he would have known that because
Mhm.
the internet hadn't been invented yet. I said he should say something that he could have said. So uh, I suggested that I said to them, what year does this take place? And it was 19, that wasn't the 70s, it was 1980s.
Yeah.
Right. For Shelton,
Um,
yes.
uh, and I said, okay, in the 1980s, the first edition of the dictionary, the one that you've got,
The one I've got. Yep.
yeah, that one had already come out. There's a revised edition that came out in 1992. That one has not yet come out in Sheldon's time, young
I have
Sheldon,
that also, but
Okay.
it was
hidden
not
away.
accessible. I know exactly where. Well, I just bought some new bookshelves, and so I cleared out my old one, so everything is stacked kind of in a weird way. So I didn't think to grab it before I
Yeah,
made my stacks.
that's right. So anyway, so I said, okay, now young Sheldon would have had access to that dictionary, so he would have learned lines from it. I think he should say "Nuk dakich tapo." So that's the line I told him to
Oh,
say,
nice.
and they say that in the thing that they sent me. The clips of the takes he did it, how you do when you make a movie, 6 or 7 times
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that he was saying it right, or if he was saying it wrong in some take, then they would not use it or whatever. And that kid, Ian Armitage, was brilliant. He was a really good Klingon speaker. But yeah,
Excellent.
Interesting.
And then, so did you get called in when Next Generation aired
for
and
Next
started?
Generation, actually, when we were working on Star Trek Five,
Mhm.
okay, the Next Generation was already being done at that time. I think it was maybe in the second year. There, um,
Mhm.
and it was very weird at Paramount at lunchtime to see, 23rd century Klingons and 24th century, or not Klingons, Star Trek people and 24th century Star Trek. Anyway, wandering down the street together. And anyway, um, the the studios for Next Generation and Star Trek were right across the street from each other, but there was no interaction between the two really. But there's a guy who worked at Paramount at the time for Star Trek named Richard Arnold, who was kind of a liaison with the fans and the production company and all that kind of stuff. So one day he was showing me a, a room in the Paramount in the Star Trek offices filled with Star Treks. I mean, books and mugs and pictures and lots of things. And there on the shelf were 3 or 4 copies of the Klingon dictionary, right?
Oh, wow.
Now, if you're an author and wander into a bookstore and see your book on the shelf in the bookstore, this is a real thrill. If you're a new author, especially, okay. But to see this book on the shelf at Paramount, like, whoa, there's some kind of legitimacy, right? So he showed me that. The next day he comes up to me, he says, I was showing you those books. Yeah. He says, all the dictionaries have disappeared from that room. Nothing
Really?
else is missing. It's a big mystery. A couple days later, he comes to me, he says, solve the mystery. They're working on an episode of Next Generation, and they're going to speak
Oh.
Klingon in it. So they went and got the dictionary to look up how to say whatever it is. And they discovered it was hard, even with the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them you were here. And they didn't, because they didn't know that. Right?
Mhm.
And they said, bring him by. So I made up some lines for next. That's how I got into doing it for Next Generation. So I did a couple episodes of Next Generation, and then from that point forward, for whatever reason, they mostly did it on their own, which makes the Klingon and Next Generation interesting. Let's use that word.
Okay. And these days, I mean, now there is a whole, Klingon Language Institute, which I'm a member of. So do people, because it has proliferated so much, do you ever get into like arguments with people about the grammar
They
and
have their
words and
ideas,
everything?
but they all
Yeah.
defer to me. Yeah,
Okay.
rightly or wrongly, they all
Okay.
defer to me. And if they don't like it, they'll say, "Well, why not this and why not that?" And sometimes it's very kind of fine-tuning esoteric stuff, and they're not wrong.
Hmm.
You know, they're very good about this. Yeah, it's amazing how much attention people have paid to it. I hadn't expected that. When I wrote the book, when you write a book, you hope people will buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was right, people did, but I honestly
Yep.
and truly thought what would happen is people would buy it, they'd thumb through it and say, "Oh, look at this, here's the Klingon word for chocolate, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Here's this cute phrase and what have you," and then put it down and pick it up from time to time, but basically look at it in that way. But in fact, some people anyway read it and reread it
Mm-hmm.
and analyzed it and made a list of the typos and all this stuff,
Wow.
and really started learning it, which I didn't anticipate that there'd be a real
Mhm.
ongoing speaking community. That was a big surprise.
Yeah. And the Language Institute, they host conventions every year.
Yeah,
They've done the translations into Shakespeare.
I didn't do
Right.
it. It's my words, but they did the
Yep.
translations. Yeah.
And you could even do Klingon on Duolingo too.
Now you
Is
can.
a
And I had
Yep.
nothing to do with that. That's
Yeah.
Klingon speakers who did that, who
Yeah.
made the
Yeah.
course.
But
Yeah.
I
if you were the creator of it, this would not exist without your
Mhm.
actions. Why aren't you
Right.
getting your dime a novel, royalties or something, or every time it's used? Because it's really,
Yeah.
if you hadn't done this, it would be like saying, who started the German language or Sanskrit or whatever.
Yeah.
There's someone had to be the originator of a
Yeah, and I'm
language.
and I'm paid at about the same rate as whoever started Sanskrit. So
Okay, we'll get you some gold coins then.
Yeah. No, and it is interesting, this whole idea of constructed languages. You just said the term conlang, which is
online.
now a term. Again, besides, some of the ones for various science fiction, and Esperanto, I guess, is a
Yeah,
conlang. I
Esperanto is
don't.
probably the most well-known conlang.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
It is
Tolkien
a.
languages maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true too. Yeah, I could have seen. I am fascinated by linguistics, mostly related to English than anything else, and that's partly, I think, because I'm a writer, so I'm just fascinated by how the language works. I could have. So then it's interesting to see the development of these. Yeah, constructed languages and how they might even evolve and drift over time too, just like, natural language evolves
And they
and
do.
drift and
They do.
yeah.
They definitely do. Yeah. Yeah.
How many, besides Klingon, how many other languages do you speak?
I speak English. That's the only one I'll fess up to.
But that's interesting. So you don't if it's not so well. Again, the interest of learning how other languages work.
Yeah, well,
I
as a
mean, like,
linguist, as a linguist, you may speak more than one language. A lot of linguists do, but
hmm
a linguist studies language not to speak them, but to understand how they work and this and that.
yeah.
And the languages that I studied the most not the conlangs, but the natural languages I studied the most were American Indian languages,
Interesting.
mostly from the West Coast, mostly from around San Francisco area.
Okay.
Okay. And at the time I was doing all that, there was zero speakers. So all of the work was based on documentation. So I didn't have anyone to sit down and talk with. A lot of people, when they learn a language, then when they go to out, when we say go out in the field, we go to some place where the language hasn't been documented yet. They sit down with a speaker, several speakers, and they eventually can develop conversational skills because there's people to talk to. And but I didn't have that, so I never learned to speak these languages that nobody was speaking. Right,
Interesting.
which is why I can't do that.
Interesting. Yeah, because I'm terrible at. I mean, I took German in middle school because I wanted to finally understand what my parents were saying in Yiddish.
Yiddish, right?
Because there's a lot of a likeness. So that's why it was interesting. The likeness of one language versus another, the similarities as a linguistic, how you can learn one language or the next because you see the similarities in the grammar or the spelling or
Right,
whatever.
exactly, and that's part of the technique, part of the approach. Yeah.
Interesting.
So when Paramount calls and says, "Hey, we want you to develop Klingon," what were some of the things that would keep you up at night that you would, you'd be fast asleep and then you'd think, "Oh my gosh, I got to do this thing." What were some of those?
Yeah, how do I deal with this particular grammatical problem was
Right.
was usually at the beginning I could just do whatever I wanted because no one had heard this before. There was a little bit of Klingon in the first movie in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There's maybe 6 or 8 lines at the very, very beginning of the movie. Those lines were not originally in English. Those lines were originally in Klingon. So that's where the Klingon language really begins in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Those lines were made up by one of the producers on the film named John Poville and by Jimmy Doohan, right? Scotty.
Right. Yes, I forgot about that.
And they made it up, and the way John Poville describes it, it was grunts and hisses and growls, things like that. They didn't have grammar in mind, and didn't really, I don't think, have much vocabulary in mind, if any. And the lines were spoken by Mark Leonard, right, who normally played Spock's father, right? And what Mark speaks, how close that is to what John and Jimmy Doohan told him to say, we'll never know. But that's the origins of Klingon. So when I started doing my Klingon for Star Trek 3, I went back to the motion picture and wrote down what they were saying, phonetically as best I could, and what the subtitles said, and that's the start. And it grew from there. But it's things like one of the lines they say in the motion pictures, "Chai Yerush," something like that. So is that 1 word or 2 words or 3 words? Nobody knows. So I decided, well, cha is a word and Yerush is another word. Why? I don't know. You got to start somewhere. Okay.
Exactly.
So just went forward from there. And then, figured out the sounds and things like that. One of the things I did think about is the language is supposed to sound alien, whatever that's supposed to mean, non-human. So I did things in the language, both grammatically and phonetically, that human languages probably don't do. And I don't want to say definitely, absolutely, but probably don't do. It'd be very unlikely to do, to give it a alien feeling, both in terms of just listening to it, and if you studied it, the same sort of thing. From the sound side, because of that, the language is difficult to pronounce if you do it correctly, because certain sounds come together that shouldn't do that in a natural language, natural Earth language. But you have to do it in Klingon. But I knew that, but I wasn't concerned about it because we were making a movie. And all I had to do was get the actors to say it once, and they would never have to say it again, right? So practice, say it. Okay, on to the next thing, right? Again, I didn't know that people are going to be speaking it all over the place. So I might have approached it a little bit differently had I known that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Are there things you wish, like very specific things you wish you had done differently, knowing
Yes, yeah,
now?
there's some grammatical things I wish I had done differently. There's some grammatical things I wish were in there that are not in there at all. I could put them in now. They wouldn't louse anything up, but
Mhm.
I haven't. The whole spelling conventions I wish I had done differently for the dictionary, because I originally made up spelling conventions for the actors where I would underline certain letters to say that's not how you say it in English. It means something different from what you think if you're thinking English. Okay, as a cue to them. When I was writing the book, so for example, I would underline an H because it's not an H, it's a, and so on.
Okay.
Uh, when I was writing the book, I would do that. But at the time, in 1984, okay, the word processor that I had access to was very new, this whole idea of computers and word processors and things. And underlining individual letters was a major pain. It was so difficult to underline. On a typewriter, it wasn't so bad, but on this computer, it was crazy. So I said, I can't do this. I'll never finish. So what I decided to do is use capital letters instead of underlining.
Oh, so that's
that's
why
why
you
they're.
did that.
That's why they're
Okay.
there.
Ah.
And just got used to that, right? From a linguistics point of view, from a writing system point of view, there is no reason to use capital letters. I could have done something else, could have made other kinds of conventions, and then you wouldn't have this odd thing of capital letters popping in and out supposedly randomly, like someone said on the keyboard or something. And in retrospect, maybe I should have for the dictionary,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't. And
Mhm.
we are Klingons, we are tough, we'll live with it.
And the use of apostrophes to
Yeah, the
break up words,
apostrophe.
is
Yeah.
that come out of Hawaiian language? Because that
It's
uses
used
a
in the same way.
tremendous amount of Hawaiian.
It's used in
Yeah.
the same way that it's used in Hawaiian. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a normal convention, or a common convention
Yeah.
in phonetic transcribing of languages to use the apostrophe. But the official name of that sound is glottal stop. But yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, because there's a series on Apple called Chief of War, and Jason
right.
Momoa has them all speaking Hawaiian. And he had, from what I understand, he had the hardest time learning Hawaiian and being able to speak it and enunciate it. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
yeah. But I put it in there in part because it chops, it makes Klingon choppy.
Right, which is the
That was
same
sort
as
of an effect
Hawaiian.
that we wanted
Yeah.
for these warrior people. Yeah.
Wow. So what keeps you busy these days?
Klingon. I'm not doing captioning anymore, but Klingon still keeps me busy, and some other languages for Star Trek.
Oh, really?
With the when the new series came, starting with Discovery,
Mm-hmm.
there's a big change in Klingon land.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
between
Dun,
between
dun, dun.
Klingon prior to Discovery and Klingon from Discovery forward. And the main difference is that the producers of Discovery and later things took the language very, very seriously in a way that some of the TV people prior didn't. And that is
Oh,
to say that
interesting.
they didn't make stuff up on their own. They were careful to get it pronounced correctly. So for Discovery, I mean, the first year of Discovery was very obviously very, very Klingon heavy,
Yes.
especially episode one, where the first 10 minutes or something are entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I did not work on that show. I did not do the Klingon for Discovery. All the Klingon was done by a woman named Robin Stewart and a little bit by another guy named Alan Anderson. Both of them excellent, excellent speakers of Klingon. It's all my words. It's all my grammar. Okay, but they did all the work. They did all the translation. And actually, with Discovery, for season one, only season one. In the U.S., it was on what was then called CBS All Access.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
yeah. I
in
forgot about
Canada,
CBS
it was
All
on
Access.
something, I forget.
I think
where it
we
was on.
have it on Crave, or it might have been Crave at that time.
Chris is in Toronto.
Yeah, I'm in Toronto.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than the US and Canada, everywhere else in the world, it was on Netflix, season one.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mhm.
And on
Yes.
Netflix, one of the things you can do, not for Star Trek, but in general, is pick subtitles in a number of different foreign languages.
Mhm.
So if the pro
Oh.
show is in English, you can watch it with French subtitles. If the show is in German, you can watch it with Spanish subtitles, whatever. You can
Mhm.
mix and match, right?
Hmm.
For Discovery, season one of the choices was Klingon. The entire season was captioned or
Wow.
subtitled rather in Klingon. Yeah. I didn't
That's
do
one of
that
my
either.
tricks.
I didn't
Yeah.
do
Oh,
that
you
either.
didn't do that.
This guy Lieven Litar in Germany did it.
You're,
So.
you're missing out all these dimes that they owe you for all this royalty.
But I have worked on Discovery, but
Oh,
for
cool.
languages other than Klingon, and I've worked
Interesting.
on the other shows for Klingon and Vulcan and some other things. Yeah.
So, such like, Enterprise, the opening sequences, there's a Klingon that they first encounter. And then when
Yeah,
Archer goes to,
Enterprise I worked on. I don't know if I did Klingon for Enterprise or not. I did Vulcan for Enterprise.
oh, you did. Okay. Okay.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that has been one of my tricks for helping to learn. Like when I was in college studying German, I was able to get videotapes of Star Trek 4 in German because I knew the movie in English really well. And I've been doing that in the last couple of years for Italian, although I've noticed Star Wars is a little bit better. The language in English in Star Wars is less complicated than the language in Star Trek. So it's
Oh,
easier for me
yeah.
to pick up the Italian and follow along with the Italian.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Star Trek and other languages in Germany, they like to dub everything rather than have subtitles.
Mm.
So the all the TV shows and the movies and things, right, are in German, dubbed
Mhm.
into German, and there's voice actors in Germany who are identified with specific actors. So in Star Trek goes on, this one particular guy did Worf, and another particular guy always did Picard or
Mhm.
whatever.
In Italy too, for the Italian too. I think that's
Same thing?
exactly what they
Yeah.
did. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
these guys had to speak Klingon from time to time, right? And they did a great job. These dubbing.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, that's awesome that there's still Star Trek going on for you. I love that, and
Yeah.
and I love this. Again, even though I am not good at language, I'm just not good at it. I've tried several. I'm still trying Italian. I still have my handy dictionary. This is just I love that this is the extension of the universe, coming off the screen and into our real lives, and that this exists. So thank you for bringing this to existence for us. This has been wonderful, and thank you so much for joining us today. This has been
This is
awesome.
really fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're so glad that we were able to get you on the show. And I think this is going to wrap up another one of our amazing episodes of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. I said it a second ago. I'm saying it again because I love to say thank you. I would do it in Klingon if I had prepared a little bit more.
Oh,
I'm just realizing now I missed an opportunity.
Originally, I intentionally left out a way to say thank you in Klingon because I figured they would never say it.
oh.
Yeah.
And then the next generation
That's right,
came
yep.
along where they said it. So I said, oh, well, I have to put it in.
Well, thank you so much for telling us some about your journey on the origins of Vulcan and Klingon. It's really been fascinating. And so for everyone, for our listeners out there, from shaping alien tongues to shaping how people experience television, Marc's legacy has truly been out of this world, right here on Earth, of course. So whether you're practicing your, I'm going to try it, how badly did I mess that up?
Klingon.
Yeah, or just grateful for the subtitles on your favorite Trek reruns. We hope you walk away from this episode inspired and entertained. Until next time, Kapla! While remembering to always be kind to others, live long and prosper, and tune in to the next episode of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast.